My name is Davir Daniels. I'm actually a graduate student at Villanova, pursuing my master's in clinical mental health counseling. St. Joe's let me sneak in for a little bit to do my practicum experience here. So I'm one of the graduate counseling interns, and I'll be doing some moderating today. So as some you know, throughout this series, we've invited alumni to join us just for some conversations about their careers in order to give you insight into different career paths, industries, and to get advice on how to enter and thrive in these fields. These sessions will be recorded, right? So if you ever wanted to go back and watch, or maybe a friend of yours couldn't make it today, you can just let them know that it was being recorded. And man, we are just so honored and so excited about our guest today. Gina Tomaine is here. Welcome, Gina. Thank you for coming. Just to give you guys a little background about who Gina is, she is a Philadelphia-based writer and editor who has edited and written for Philadelphia Magazine for the past 3 years. She graduated from SJU in 2010 with a double major in English and economics. While at SJU, Gina interned with the House of Commons in the UK Parliament and was an opinion column student writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. After graduating from SJU, Gina pursued a graduate degree at Emerson College in Boston. While in graduate school, Gina worked for the Boston Globe and Boston Magazine and taught writing at the Snowden International School. She also wrote frequently for NPR's From the Top, where she interviewed classical musicians. She has since lectured as an adjunct professor in writing, literature, and publishing at Rosemont College and SJU, and has held various editorial roles at Philadelphia Magazine and Rodell's Organic Life. Her features, essays, and commentary have appeared in New York's magazine The Cut, Vice, Cosmopolitan, Women's Health, the Boston Globe, Yoga Journal, and Longreads. I'm excited to welcome you back, Gina, to Hawk Hill. I have a list of questions for you. We'll follow that up with a quick Q&A from our listeners. So everyone in the audience, feel free to just write some questions in the chat box as they come up, and those will be shared at the end. So I'm tired of talking. I know y'all didn't come to hear me talk.
That was an amazing introduction, though.
Right,
so
I know.
I'm very happy to be here. So thank you. That
Yes,
was
no
great.
problem, no problem. So let's get started. We're going to begin with a series of career-focused questions. So the first question I have for you, Gina, is could you describe within your current role the core responsibilities and what a typical day or week looks like for you?
Sure. So I was a full-time editor for Philly Mag for the past 3 years. And recently I made the switch to be a freelance editor. So I'll tell you what I'm doing now. Basically, now I am editing for Yoga Journal and Philadelphia Magazine. Those are my primary employers, but I'm also open to other freelance work. So I'm working on a story for the Globe, the Boston Globe this week as well. So what that means is for right now for Yoga Journal, I'm managing their July, August, and September, October print issue content. So I am coming up with ideas with a team, meeting with the art team and the editorial team to figure out what we're going to cover, how we're going to cover it, who's going to write it, finding the writers, assigning it to them, or writing it myself, depending. And then making sure that we're getting things in by deadline, editing those pieces, going through several rounds of edits, then meeting with the art team to see how it's going to lay out in the magazine. And yeah, that's basically how it's going now. And then I'm also freelance writing. So I'll write pieces for Philadelphia and the Boston Globe, as I mentioned, is just what I have going this week. So today I wrote a story for Philadelphia Magazine about the Apple TV show Servant. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's a scary show. But it's basically, M. Night is filming it in Philly in Rittenhouse, and the owners of the home, instead of taking the location fee that would normally be paid to them, they're donating their entire location fee to CHOP, because it's a home of a CHOP researcher. So I got to talk with them and talk about that show and how that's a cool Philly thing that's happening. So just write stories about interesting things and help other writers do it.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And to be completely honest, Gina, like after reading about you, like I'm like a fan. right? So I just have some
I don't
questions.
get that.
I just have some questions about what you just said. So like with the freelancing,
Mhm.
um, do different magazines, companies reach out to you, or is that something on your end where you kind of have to put on your, I guess, entrepreneur hat to kind of find those opportunities for yourself?
That's a great question. So it is a huge mix of both. Um, you, as a freelancer, you're essentially a business for yourself. So what you want to do, and what I at least have going right now, is have kind of some anchor clients who are going to be coming to you with work. So right now, say Yoga Journal, they're a national magazine. They came to me and said, hey, we need someone who we know can do this job and who can make this magazine happen. And I said, I'm available. That's great. Let's make it happen. So now I have that guaranteed week to week on a certain basis of time. And then the rest of my time, it might be that like the Boston Globe would come to me and say, because I know someone there, or it could be that, say, like, I know that Vice is looking for stories about, how to improve habits that you're not doing well. So I'm going to pitch them and come to them with some ideas. So it's really a mix. You want to have a little bit of both, because it is a big hustle when you're always reaching out to people. I pitched the story for Philadelphia that I wrote today about the show. So it's a mix of both, getting your name out there and people knowing you're doing good work, so they come to you, and then also really be hustling and, putting your work out there to other people.
Yeah, yeah, that's so awesome. That is so awesome.
Thank you.
Another question I have for you is one thing that I talk about kind of in the Career Counseling Center is what you go to bed dreaming about, right? I think a lot of times when we're trying to figure out career paths, it's hard because we like a bunch of different things. We have a lot of different passions, but I found that personally that question helped clarify my own path. So I'm wondering for you, when did you know that this career path that it was what you wanted to pursue, and what kind of led to that decision for you?
Wow. I mean, I was like 11 years old when I was making my own magazine. So
Yeah.
I think it was not, that was definitely always happening. I was always writing. I was writing little books and magazines all the time. I had my little online zine I sent out. And I think in school, actually, at St. Joe's, which, is what we're here to talk about. It wasn't that I got there and I was like, I'm going to really pursue this writing career. It was almost like in college, I was just I was studying hard, but I wasn't really career focused at all, which is maybe a good thing, I think. But then when it was time to kind of figure out like what I wanted to do, the only thing I could think of I still wanted to do was write. So I went to grad school and kept writing. So basically, I sorry, my husband's sneezing in the background. If you can hear that, so me laugh. Okay, sorry. So to focus, when I graduated from St. Joe's, I had done writing for the Hawk, and I'd done some other really big writing projects there that I was really happy about. But I hadn't like set myself up for a career in that way. Like I wasn't doing like a lot of internships solely geared towards writing. So I went and got my graduate degree, and it was really just, I couldn't think of anything else I wanted to do more. It was like less a conscious decision than it was just like I'm obsessed with writing, and when I'm not writing for work, I'm writing for myself and writing in my journal or writing poems or writing a novel. It's just kind of it's always how it's been. So I guess that is what I dream about. So it's a good question.
Yeah, and to go off of that, so with the individual who's kind of on the fence, right, about this career path, would that be kind of the advice you would give about like if it's something it's all you can think about, that's the thing to pursue, or would it look a little different?
I think that not everybody has that where it's all you can think about. Honestly, I think most people don't have that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think I just have an obsessive personality. So I think it's perfectly okay if you don't exactly know what you wanted to do. And even though I knew how much I loved writing, I didn't know that I wanted to do that in undergrad. So I think like I went in undecided, and I left still not really sure what I wanted to do. I was just like, well, I really love writing, so I'll just try that out. But I think my advice would be like, I would pick it if it's something that is a passion. I think, especially if you're trying to get into media and journalism, I think if you're doing more uh, writing for like corporate communications or PR, there's a lot of career avenues open to you, and that's great. But if you are trying to get into journalism and media, it's a rough time right now. So I think you really have to want to grind and hustle for that. So yeah, I think there are important questions to ask yourself though, because if you find something that does have you dreaming at night about it, then you're going to put in the extra work to pursue it.
Yeah, yeah. And one more follow-up, like one thing that you mentioned is it being a passion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I've found that a lot of people struggle with differentiating between a passion and a hobby. So in this setting, how would you differentiate between the two?
That's a good question. To think about that.
Yeah.
I guess,
We got time.
yeah, no, it's good. I think that the passion is from it being just like something that compels you so much, where it's not just like something you kind of enjoy doing, but it's something that it's honestly gonna be torture as much as it's going to be amazing, because you're just so invested in the work you're doing. That's how I think people that I have found that are serious about writing generally tend to feel, because you're just so emotionally bound up in it. And that's kind of like, I'm not saying that's something that, again, you need to do, but some people feel that way about writing. And that, I think that differentiates it. Whereas like a lot of people write for a hobby, which is a good thing. And you should, it's a good way to process, how you feel and process what you really think about something. I think I always don't really know what I think until I write it down. And then I read it back and I'm like, oh, that's what I think. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you.
mhm.
So moving on, what is the typical career path for an entry level associate within kind of your space, right? And then you also talked about this idea of entrepreneurship. So, like as an entrepreneur, what post grad experience do you think best prepares someone for starting their own business?
I think that, I guess that's twofold. So the first would be, you would probably need an internship to start breaking into this industry. You can intern if you're in, if you're in Philly, you can also intern a lot of places virtually even now. But you could intern at the Inquirer or Philadelphia Magazine, or I'm sure, the Philly Voice or something like that. Or there's Resolve Philly and Broken Philly. There's a lot of really great organizations that you can try to pursue an internship with. And then you would try to get like an editorial assistant or some type of assistant role that would train you to do the work and to learn how whatever publication you're at actually does things, because it's very niche. And yeah, from there you could work your way up. And then for the entrepreneurial aspect, I think you would want to be writing for your school paper now to get those clips. You would want to also write for probably your own website, just make a little website, and then see if there are even blogs like Medium where you can start honing those skills and writing things that are, going to just build up kind of a body of work. And then you can start pitching stories. And the idea is kind of pitch in tiers. So you maybe want to pitch like some place that's like more accessible and that isn't like the New York Times, like the first round, like maybe you're pitching a blog and then you want to work your way up and then you want to work your way up the publication. And I actually teach a course on this at St. Joe's in the grad school, and I'll be teaching it this fall if anyone's interested. It's writing for publication. So we'll be discussing that all semester.
Yeah, that's awesome. And excuse my ignorance, but I'm familiar with, I'm in the psychology counseling space, so I know about internships and practice and stuff like that. But in writing and journalism, what is that process like in obtaining an internship? And is that something that usually leads to work, or is there more that goes into that?
Um, I say to get an internship because that's how I got my jobs.
Gotcha.
So I know there's other ways to go about it, but I think you need clips. And I think at an internship, if you put in the work, you'll typically come out with clips. So you'll typically come out with stories for whatever publication, or you should. And if you're not, then you should be pushing that you need that. But it does take a bit of pushing, because I mean, the internship landscape isn't great, and people are still doing unpaid internships, unfortunately, which makes it, not possible for a lot of people. Um, but I think that internships are the foot in the door, and in this industry, it helps to have a foot in the door, and it
Yeah.
helps to know higher level editors so you can talk to them and stay in touch with them. So then when
Yeah.
there is an opening, they're going to think of you, or they need someone who's just a freelance writer and they're going to think of you. Um, so that's often how it works. And not every internship will lead to a job, but at least gives you the shot.
Cool. Gotcha. Okay. And then kind of still talking about that entrepreneurship, how do you balance start your own business with working full time in the industry?
Sorry, say that again.
Sorry. So talking about that entrepreneurship piece,
Yeah.
how do you balance starting your own business with working full time in the industry?
Do you mean after, because I'm not working full time now, but just clarifying.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess in the event that that's something that comes up. So maybe I'm not sure. Like maybe if you're hired by
Mm-hmm.
like the New York Times, and you still have that desire to kind
Mm-hmm.
of do your own thing. What would that
Okay.
look like?
Makes sense. Perfect. Yeah, so I've done that a lot. So what that would look like is you have to kind of know what your full-time work is looking like, and it's cyclical. So sometimes you're going to be extremely busy and you're not going to have time to think about anything else, and sometimes you're maybe going to have a little leeway in your schedule. And during those times, I think that's when I would be seeking out other publications I want to write for, that maybe don't cover the same thing that my publication does. Like if I'm writing only for Philadelphia because I'm full-time there, but I know I have like a kind of just psychological national story that doesn't fit with Philadelphia because it's not about Philly, then I can be pitching Cosmopolitan, which is what I did with that clip. So I was working full time at Philly, but I would still find the editor for Cosmopolitan, put together a pitch, and put together kind of like, this is who I am, this is why I should write this for you, and then get that pitch accepted and write that. So like you want to always, of course, prioritize getting your work done at your job, and not being a bad employee, but also you're probably doing extra for your job at other times too, so you can take a little time back for yourself. And as writers, you're almost encouraged to, because you want to diversify your clips and get your name in more publications. So it looks better for the publication when they have high profile writers writing for them anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. One of the things that I think stands out just talking to you is the passion kind of that you speak of, right? So going off of that, what do you enjoy more about your profession? But also to give us a little bit about something that you wish you could change as well.
Hmm. Um, what I enjoy most is when I really feel like I've like nailed a story, whether it's editing or writing, and I'm like, oh, I like got that. And someone can read that and I can see that they're going to be swept up by that story, and they're going to get emotional, and they're going to be transported and like forget where they are, and they're going to think that they're in this story. And that is like, that's it. That's what I'm always reaching towards. That does not happen that often, but some, it happens to certain degrees, and then like sometimes it really happens, and it's just an amazing experience. And I think that that's what, if you really love journalism, you really love stories, that's kind of your goal, is to tell those stories that are going to move people, that are going to share something about the human experience. But what I don't like is that this industry is exhausting. Burnout is extremely common. There is a huge problem with newsrooms not knowing how to balance digital versus print. So it's kind of like you're pushing people to do too much work So you're not getting any of that satisfaction because you're just doing a lot of fast stories. And I would change all of that. So I think that I'm existing in a situation where there's a lot of things wrong with this industry, unfortunately, which are just a result of them trying to figure out how to be financially sustainable in a changing media climate. So it's not anyone's fault, but it's difficult to do good work when you're rushing. So
yeah. And you know that word burnout stood out to me. Now you're speaking my language. That's like a psychology, right? I'm interested. I'm interested. So how can people in the industry avoid that burnout? What are the steps that people could be taking to not be burnt out?
I think you have to be really proactive about protecting yourself from that and saying like, no, like I can't do this today. Like I really, need more time. Or like taking days off, if you're a full-time employee, taking that paid time off, or if you're an entrepreneur, just like saying, I'm not working on Friday, and then not working. So I think there's a culture of constant hustle in not just journalism, but all over. So I think it can be really difficult to shut down. So I think it's like being proactive about those things and holding on to your sense of self as not just about the work you're doing. And that can be difficult when you're passionate about your job, but it's important because your work's not going to always be there for you. So I think you really have to prioritize yourself, and that's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, that's good insight. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This next question: what has surprised you the most about your career?
I mean that I'm doing it. I think.
Yeah.
I think it's. I think it's nice. I think conversations like these are always nice to look back because you can think of, yourself as a college student or whatever who had no idea what you were getting into, and then look back and be like, oh, okay, like I am in a place that I'm pretty happy with and proud of. So I think I never like thought, oh, I have a through line to be a writer or an editor. I never really even knew what that meant to do that. But I just kept asking people questions and, sticking around in this industry. And I think also just being like very persistent, even if it wasn't a linear path, like you're not always just going to get a journalism job, like I was working in admissions at St. Joe's and just writing after work. So like, it's just, you have to be kind of patient also, and not expect like that everything is going to just unfold the minute you graduate college, I think.
Yeah, that's good. I want to shift gears a little bit just to focus on actions that students need to take. And we kind of touched a little bit on it. If you could, I would like to expound on some things. And again, for the students that are here, just remember you can post any questions in the chat that you want to ask Gina. So I want to talk about internships a little bit again. But for right now, could you just list and I think you did touch on this before, but could you list 2 to 3 experiences you would suggest students engaging in now while in college to help prepare them for post-grad opportunities?
I think that if you kind of have an idea what industry you might want to be in, you should talk to your professors more than you probably are. I mean, maybe some of you are, but I think it's just like your professors have industry contacts and have a wealth of career information generally that they can share. So if you're like desperate to be a food writer, you should be in the English department talking to Tanaya Darlington. Like you just need to like access the resources that are in front of you. And that's going to take you far. So I think that's a big thing. It's just like saying like, hey, like, can I talk to you, about this or that? And because you're a student, people are generally inclined to really want to help, especially people that are at your school. And then I think pursuing internships, if you can, absolutely. If you can do it financially, then you should be trying different internships in your field. And like I said, if you're interested in writing specifically, you should be writing for either the literary magazine or the newspaper, and also looking at other publications that it could be other student-run publications that you should be trying to write for, and and submit to, and finding people around you that can support that, because it's hard to do any of this alone. So I think if you find other friends on campus or elsewhere that are passionate about writing or media, then you can kind of do it together. And I think that makes the going a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great point.
Mhm.
Next question. So how did your SJU education impact how you work and or the career decisions you've made to date?
Um, I think that the best thing about my SJU education was I felt like I was constantly surrounded by very kind people, and I felt very lucky in that. I spent a lot of time in the English department and the economics department, and both of them, I think everyone was very encouraging and just like caring people that I think gave me advice when I needed it, when I didn't know about grad school. They connected me with a bunch of people who went to my grad school when I didn't really know what I was doing. I think they were always there. So that's why I say teachers can be such a great resource if you ask for help. And then I think also like friends. Like I wasn't that I was serious about school, but I wasn't that serious about my career in college. But I think I did make very good friends that kind of sustained me and that carried me through while I was figuring all of these things out. And yeah, I think it's like it's definitely a people factor, but it's also like really taking advantage of what things are already in front of you, because so often there's so many resources. Like I remember I could get like any book I wanted from interlibrary loan. I didn't figure that out until like the fourth year. But it's just like you should tap into the resources you have while they're in front of you, and also after you graduate, if you're trying to figure out a situation at XYZ, maybe someone else has a contact there if you reach back out to your department. So I think it's just like allowing yourself to um, make those connections and sustain them.
Yeah, yeah. And then talking about resources, I promise this is the last time I'll bring up internships. But are there any specific internships you recommend for people that's trying to prepare for a role like yours or just in your industry in general? And also, when should students start looking for those internships?
I think you should definitely be interning your junior year. I mean, some people were interning sophomore year. I wasn't, but I did my junior year internship, and then I did the Inquirer one during the school year. So I think I worked at Electric City and the Scranton Times back in Scranton. I'm from Scranton, so Northeast PA. I just worked there. I don't think I think I got paid like $500 or something. It was for like the entire summer, but I was living at my mom's, so it was fine. But yeah, I think I worked at a really small paper back where I lived and got some experience there. And also just worked at like a cafe waitressing, and then um, yeah, I did an internship that had nothing to do with what I was doing, but it also taught me how to exist in an office, I think. And St. Joe's just had a great study abroad program, which I don't know how that's working right now, but I was able to do the Parliament internship through St. Joe's. And that taught me a lot about, working in a high pressure environment and working in an office. And yeah, then I think there's a lot of St. Joe students at Philadelphia Magazine. There's a lot of marketing St. Joe students. There could be more editorial, but there are some. Those internships are always available. They are unpaid, which I think is very bad, but that's the case. So they are available year round. They're summer, fall, and spring. And then the Inquirer also runs internships. Resolve Philly also runs internships. And I'm sure there's other publications that have good internship programs in the area, but the journalism or English department could help with that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm sorry, I have to bring this up, but you said you're from Scranton, right?
That's right. So you said it correctly.
You know what my follow-up question is for that?
How
Are
do you
you
pronounce Scranton?
no, are you oh wait, is there like a debate as to how to pronounce it?
No, like you pronounce it like I pronounce it, but people
Oh, okay.
sometimes make fun of me because, and you said it correctly in my mind,
Okay.
but some people say it should be like Scranton, but
No,
yeah,
no. Yeah.
no,
Does
yeah.
anybody here say it that way? Because I'm gonna kick you out the session if you do.
Thank you.
Like, no. No, but my follow-up was, so are you a fan of The Office?
Oh, of course.
Oh, okay, good, good.
Yeah,
Because I have a friend who's from Scranton, but she hates The Office.
that's
I'm like, how? Yeah, okay, sorry, that's a tangent. Any other Office fans in here? Maybe? Okay, that doesn't matter. Thank you, Danielle. So I just have a few more questions for you as we're wrapping up. Um, what is something that you wish someone told you when you were in school?
that I wasn't going to just work at New York Magazine as soon as I graduated. I think I just, thought that you're supposed to just get a great job when you graduate. I mean, I graduated in 2010. We were in a recession and everyone was in a terrible, terrible position. And I know, again, now we're dealing with COVID. So it's another, really difficult position. But I think that I was, really hard on myself because I thought that I should be able to get a dream job right away or have it figured out right away. And I think if I could go back, I wish I could tell myself, like, it's okay if you're working a job that has nothing to do with what you want, as long as you keep making those moves by like attending, readings and joining like an online literary group or like, starting to pitch magazines freelance. Like you can be
Yeah.
working towards what you want no matter what job you're in right after you graduate. And I think like I don't know anyone that had a linear path to get to this type of career. So I think that's the biggest thing I would have told myself.
Yeah, yeah, and if there was one thing that you could tell a student, just kind of one nugget of advice that you can give to someone, what would that advice be?
Um, I mean, probably the same advice. I think students are way too hard on themselves. I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends what type of student you are, but I think that you have to learn to like roll with the punches a little bit. And they call it like the Tarzan method, right? Like you're going to roll to one thing. It's not exactly what you want, but then you swing to the next thing and, you get closer and closer to what you want. So I think that. I also think like negotiate your salary. I think that's a big thing. And, you know, it's okay to switch jobs and look for a higher salary too. If you are in a position that's not serving you well and you just stay there, nothing's going to change, so sometimes it can be best to leave or to leave and negotiate higher. So I think it's like advocate for yourself, but also like be willing to be a little humble and realize that things take time.
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice. Thank you.
Mhm.
Uh, so that was all the questions I have for you. We're just going to transition to a little Q&A. Let me check out this chat. Okay, it looks like we have one question in here. Um, So, as an editor, how do you and your team decide what to cover for a monthly issue? Also, how do you find stories like the story about the movie Servant?
Hmm. Um, Good question. So if we're talking about like Philadelphia, how we would find stories, we would see if the issue had a theme, because sometimes issues have themes like school or it could be a food issue. So that's one thing. If it doesn't have a theme, then we are looking at our big feature pitches to see what's really interesting that's going on in the city, what's interesting that's going on in people's lives. I wrote a big cover story a couple of years ago just about how millennial Philadelphians were struggling with whether or not they wanted to have kids. And it was just like an interview with people all over the city who were like talking about this a lot. And it's such a like broad topic, but just talking to people, it ended up being like a hugely viral story because so many people wanted to talk about this issue and like how they felt about it in like 2019 or 2020. So I think it's like looking around and seeing what people are talking about that's making them like, we say if it passes like the 5-minute rule. So if I bring it up and people will argue for 5 minutes about it, then like it's probably a good story. So we'll have meetings and talk about like what gets people excited, what gets people disagreeing with each other, or like not in like a angry way, in a like, oh, I think this, what do you think, type of way. And then also what's like what's compelling and just newsy and interesting. Like the Servant story and the M. Night Shyamalan show is just interesting because you wouldn't think that they would be like supporting pediatric brain tumor research. And that is just because I'm a reporter, so people would say, I think someone who worked at the magazine, not in editorial, was like, hey, Gina, like you should talk to this person who does the locations for movies because she has some interesting stories. And then I talked to her and then she's like, oh, like, did you know that like Servant, the location fee gets donated here? And I'm like, oh, that's a great story. And then I have to write it up and put it in a pitch and send it to my editor. And then my editor will ignore the email for 3 weeks. And then I have to follow up and say like, hey, like this is a good story. Did you read the email? So I think it's like a lot of persistence. It's like seeing something and knowing it's interesting and then like bringing it up multiple times because most editors are pretty exhausted. But yeah, so it's like, what do you think would make someone stop and feel something? Like this story that came out today, like we posted it on the Philadelphia Magazine Facebook, if you go on there right now, and there's like 1,000 people and they're like so happy about it because it's just like a nice feel good story. So I think it's like, what can like evoke a reaction in someone, whether it's like, oh, I want to talk about whether or not I'm going to have kids, or whether it's like, I want to hear about a big TV show that donated all their fees to like kids' brain cancer research. So there's like an emotional pull, some type of tension, and some type of like interest, I guess.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Well, that was the only question we had in the Q&A. So we just want to thank you so much, Gina, for taking some time just to chat with us, to let us dig into your story a little bit. So yeah, thank you so much. We're so grateful for that.